In this recording, we're going to learn how to simplify expressions that have negatives under the radical. So these are going to involve imaginary numbers. And I'd like you to jot this down. If we have a square root of a negative number, assuming that a value is positive, which is what this is saying, that's equivalent to I times the square root of that a value. Okay, so in other words, what we're saying is, first, always take the I out. You're going to hear us say that a lot. Take the I out when you've got a negative radicand. So if we have square root of negative 7, we're simply going to take the I out. We're going to write it as I square root of 7. And there's nothing further we can do because 7 doesn't have any perfect square factors other than 1. If we take the I out and it's a perfect square, well, you know the square root of 64, so you can take the I out, sure. But then the square root of 64 is a perfect square, so you can just write it as 8i. If you want to skip that intermediate step, that's perfect. Now notice something a little peculiar here. When it's a irrational number like 7, we write the I before the square root. If it's a rational number like 8, we write the I after. Okay? So what are we going to do with square root of negative 20? Well, first off, we're going to take the I out. And now we're going to consider this 20. Well, 20 is not a perfect square like 64 was. But unlike 7, it does have perfect square factors. So we have to think about what they are. And I would break down square root of 20 into its largest perfect square, which is 4, and square root of 5. Okay? Because 4 times 5 is 20. And now, square root of 4 is one you know, so it's 2. The way we write it is 2i square root of 5. We write the rational part first, then the imaginary unit, then the irrational part. Okay? So why don't you try to break down the square root of negative 50. Now there's a negative sign out in front. That just means the overall answer is going to be negative. Why don't you try to break down the square root of negative 50? Play the recording when you're ready. Okay, so first of all, you took the I out. So we have negative square root of 50. And now considering square root of 50 has the perfect square 25 that goes into it. So I would write it as I square root of 25 square root of 2. Now some of you are going to skip over this step that I just wrote and jump over here to negative 5i square root of 2. But it would be okay to write this step kind of showing our thought here that 25 times 2 makes 50 and 25 is the largest perfect square. Now there's a nice way to check this on your calculator. If you type into your calculator square root of negative 64, it will just say 8i. If you type in square root of negative 7, you'll see a bunch of decimal and then the I. So the way to check it for negative square root of negative 50 would be to type this expression in, type this expression in, making sure your mode is set to a plus bi, and they should come out to be the same decimal. Just remember, take the I out. Thanks for watching.